Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So let's get started. For 8 months, every time I tried to initiate intimacy with my wife, I was met with the same gentle refusal. I'm sorry. She always followed it with some version of the same excuse. Her libido had vanished completely. It's not you, she'd reassure me. It's probably hormones. Or maybe just work stress. At first, I didn't take it personally. I knew relationships had their ups and downs. Marriage wasn't meant to be perfect. So I stepped back, gave her space, and did my best to be patient and understanding. But 8 months? That wasn't a rough patch. That was a pattern. And it began to eat away at me. Other things started to catch my eye. She was constantly on her phone, chuckling at texts and hastily locking the screen whenever I walked into the room. Her style changed too. She started dressing more provocatively, spending extra time on her appearance, her hair, her makeup, her outfits. Not what you'd expect from someone claiming zero interest in physical affection. The moment everything shifted came at a backyard barbecue. I was standing by the grill, chatting with the host, when he offhandedly mentioned seeing my wife at a downtown bar the Friday before. What he described didn't match the woman I was living with, at least not the version she showed me. He said she looked engaged, animated, laughing, leaning in close to a man, touching his arm. Definitely not someone withdrawn from romantic interest. Worse still, I hadn't even known she'd gone out. She'd told me she was spending the night quietly at her sister's. That was the instant it all clicked. I wasn't paranoid. I was being lied to. The woman who insisted she had no passion left had simply redirected it. Just not toward me. I didn't confront her right away. I needed clarity first. I started keeping track. Noting every strange contradiction, every unexplained outing, every story that didn't quite add up. She became more secretive. Her phone practically glued to her hand, her explanations increasingly vague. The lies piled up beneath seemingly ordinary conversations. Then one night, I suggested we go out together. Just the two of us. Maybe a date night could help us reconnect. Her answer came quickly and predictably. I'm just not in the mood. Instead, she wanted to stay in and watch a movie. But later that same evening, I watched her spend nearly 2 hours getting ready to go out with her friends. Full makeup, heels, tight dress. She looked stunning. Odd outfit for someone supposedly drained of desire. I began testing small things. I'd mentioned concerts, restaurants, day trips, places I thought might interest her. She always had a reason not to go. But when her friends suggested those same activities, suddenly, she was available and excited. Once I started paying attention, the pattern couldn't have been clearer. The final proof came tucked inside her purse, a receipt from a hotel lounge downtown. The date matched a night she'd come home to, tired for affection after work. The timestamp showed she'd been out until after midnight. That night, lying silently beside her in bed, my decision crystallized. If she was going to treat our marriage like a game, then I'd stop playing by her rules. I wasn't going to keep being the fool who trusted blindly while she led a double life. I had 2 paths. Stay the accommodating husband she thought she could manipulate, or become the man who demanded truth and delivered consequences. The man I was a year ago might have begged for answers, tried to patch things up, clung to the remnants of hope. But the man lying in that bed, eyes open in the dark, he was finished. If she felt nothing for her husband, then maybe she shouldn't have one anymore. By morning, I had a plan. I wouldn't jump straight into a confrontation. I needed undeniable proof first. And once I had it, I'd show her exactly what betrayal costs. She had no idea what was coming, but she was about to learn that not every man just accepts the lies quietly. That Monday, I made 3 phone calls that set the wheels in motion. First, I hired a private investigator. Second, I scheduled a meeting with a divorce lawyer. Third, I contacted my bank to make the necessary financial adjustments. Finding a reputable investigator wasn't as difficult as I feared. I did my homework, read reviews, looked into their experience, and chose someone with a solid background in domestic cases. When we met at his office, I laid everything out. The late-night outings, the unexplained receipts, the inconsistencies. He listened without judgment, calm and professional, and then walked me through how these cases usually unfold. They all think they're being subtle, he said, but it's almost always the same story. If someone's hiding where they've been, if they claim they've lost interest in intimacy, odds are there's something much deeper going on underneath. I didn't pause when I brought him on. The objective was clear-cut: monitor her actions, document everything, and deliver irrefutable proof of what she was really doing during those times she claimed she wasn't in the mood for physical closeness. Speaking with the attorney added further clarity. He outlined my legal standing, explained the type of documentation that would be admissible, and mapped out the steps I needed to take to shield myself financially. If you're going to move forward, he advised, do it carefully. Anticipate every possible outcome. Keep meticulous records, safeguard your resources, and don't let emotion cloud your judgment. That was the moment it sank in. This wasn't mere doubt anymore. I needed to be ready for everything. My first step was to quietly open a new bank account at a completely unrelated bank. I began channeling my income into it in small increments, spaced out over several weeks to avoid raising any red flags. I wasn't doing anything unlawful, just making sure that my years of effort didn't vanish because I'd placed too much faith in the wrong person. I duplicated every key document, both digitally and on paper: bank statements, insurance forms, property deeds, tax records. All of it went into a safety deposit box she didn't even know existed. If things deteriorated, I would not be caught off guard. Just 3 days later, the investigator contacted me. She's not spending her Friday nights with her sister, he informed me. She's hit 3 different bars this week, always with the same man. And trust me, they're not just old friends catching up. He forwarded the images. There she was, the same woman who constantly dismissed intimacy as unimportant, sitting close to another man at a bar, smiling, leaning into him. In one photo, his hand rested on her leg. In another, she was murmuring into his ear while he laughed. But that wasn't the extent of it. She's been to his place too, twice this week alone, the investigator continued. She stayed for hours each time. I've documented everything: photos, timestamps, the works. I stared at the images glowing on my screen. This was the same woman who now flinched at a simple goodnight kiss, who repeatedly told me she no longer felt desire. Yet here she was, fully present, just not with me. The lawyer's words echoed back like a distant chill. Stay calm, make rational choices, don't react emotionally. But as I absorbed the photos, something in me changed. It wasn't fury. It was colder, a brutal clarity, the kind that settles in when you finally stop making excuses for someone's betrayal. She'd relied on my loyalty to shield her. I picked up the phone and called the investigator again. Get everything, I said. Phone records if you can, more surveillance, a full map of her movements. It'll take a week or 2 more, he replied. But just so you know, you've already got more than enough. Meanwhile, I kept playing the role of the trusting husband. I didn't interrogate her. My voice stayed steady. I didn't give her the slightest clue that I already knew exactly where she was and who she was seeing. When she said she was heading out with friends, I smiled and wished her a good time. She never suspected a thing. The toughest part was her return from these so-called girls' nights. She'd spin detailed tales about dinners or movies, crafting lies with practiced ease. Sometimes she'd even complain about feeling exhausted, using that as another barrier to avoid closeness. I kept the act going. Of course, sweetheart. Get some rest. We'll catch up tomorrow. but inside, I was compiling my own archive. Every lie was noted, every fabricated excuse logged. While the investigator documented her life on the outside, I was building my own case from within our home. 2 weeks later, the full picture emerged. She'd been involved with this man for at least 4 months. She'd been to his home more than a dozen times. They'd gone drinking, dined out, and even slipped away for a weekend, one she claimed was for work. The same woman who insisted physical affection didn't matter had created a secret, parallel existence. She must have thought I was naive, blind, or just unwilling to face the truth. She underestimated me completely. 3 weeks after hiring the private eye, a thick manila envelope landed at my door, and it contained everything. The evidence wasn't just incriminating, it was precise. The investigator had left nothing to chance. Dozens of sharp images, a detailed timeline, even audio recordings from public places where they'd met. Every item came with timestamps, addresses, and explanatory notes. The photos told the full story on their own. One showed her walking into his building at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, the very day she told me she was buried in late meetings. Another caught them kissing in his car outside a restaurant. A third captured them checking into a hotel together. During a weekend, she said she'd be at a professional seminar. The most damning proof came in the form of an audio file, discreetly captured by the private investigator I'd hired. He had trailed them to a neighborhood cafe, seated himself inconspicuously nearby, and recorded their conversation. I slid in my earbuds and tapped play, only to be hit by the familiar sound of my wife's voice, each syllable slicing into me with cold precision. "He has no clue," she was saying. "I tell him I'm not in the mood, and he just accepts it." There was a short laugh from the man seated with her. "He doesn't question that?" "Not at all," she answered with a hint of amusement. "I just say I'm hanging with my sister or going out with the girls. He trusts me so completely, it doesn't even occur to him to doubt me. He's too preoccupied trying to be this ideal husband to risk seeming controlling." I hit pause. The woman I had defended, the woman I had offered endless understanding to, was casually mocking my faith in her. This wasn't just infidelity. It was scorn. I forced myself to continue the recording. "The funniest part," she went on, "is that he still tries to be romantic. He books dinners, plans date nights. I just shut it down, say I'm not in the mood. I keep blaming it on my libido." "And he just buys that?" the man asked. "Every time," she said with a laugh. "It breaks his heart, but he never pushes. It's perfect." "What's the plan long term?" he asked her. "You can't keep this going forever." She hesitated before replying. "I don't really know. Maybe I'll blame hormones or some medical condition. Guys don't really understand that kind of stuff anyway. As long as he thinks it's something biological, he won't go digging." I stopped the playback. I couldn't take any more. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment on her part. It was a systematic, deliberate humiliation. She hadn't merely stepped outside the bounds of our marriage. She'd built an entire narrative where I was the gullible, desperate fool. The investigator had done more than just deliver the recording. He had compiled a thorough report. Her whereabouts, her meetings, her lies. For 4 months, the same stretch she claimed intimacy was off the table, she'd been seeing this other man routinely. 3 times a week, give or take. Sometimes they'd meet at his place. Other times, in rented hotel rooms. There were even entire weekends she spent with him, masked as business trips or family obligations. It wasn't a random affair. It was a structured deception. She hadn't just betrayed our vows. She had meticulously rewritten the story of our marriage. All the while, I was left to question myself, to feel guilt for wanting the closeness we once had. I laid out the photographs the investigator had provided, spreading them carefully across my desk. In each image, she was vibrant, smiling, fully alive. There was no doubt anymore. Her passion still existed. It just wasn't for me. My lawyer had warned me this moment would come. When you get the confirmation, don't react. Let it settle. Handle it with a clear head. I remembered those words. I gathered all the documents, returned them to the envelope, and locked it away in my safety deposit box. Then I returned home and pretended nothing had changed. When she asked about my day, I told her it had been quiet. When she mentioned her plans to see her sister that night, I smiled and wished her a good time. But beneath the surface, a plan was already unfolding. I now had everything I needed: hard evidence, damning audio, a bulletproof timeline. Her web of lies was unraveling, and I had already secured my financial standing and legal protections. She still thought she had the upper hand. She had no idea the tables had turned. That evening, after she left once more, I reviewed everything again. The pictures, the dates, the sound of her voice mocking my efforts. In those images, she looked fulfilled, relaxed, joyful. Not like someone suffering through a personal battle. No. She was simply giving her affection to someone else. By morning, she would understand what that cost her. For 8 long months, I had offered patience. I had listened without blame, offered her space, tried to rebuild what we had. But everyone has a limit. Mine had been reached. I waited for the right opportunity. Friday night. She came home late again, drained and irritable. Her standard post-girls' night demeanor. "Can we talk for a moment?" I asked, sitting down across from her in the living room. She glanced up from her phone, already steeling herself for yet another awkward discussion about the growing distance between us. "Sure," she said. "What's up?" I reached over and picked up the folder I had set aside. "I've been thinking about everything that's been going on," I began, my tone calm and steady. 8 months is a long time, so I started doing some digging. Her expression softened, perhaps believing I was about to suggest therapy or a visit to a doctor. A faint smile touched her lips. "That's really considerate," she said. "I came across something I think you'll find interesting," I replied, opening the folder on my lap. "Tell me, do women who claim to have no sex drive usually spend multiple nights a week downtown with the same man?" Her face drained of all color. She straightened up instantly, alert now, but I wasn't done. I placed the first photo on the table between us. It showed her sitting across from another man at a restaurant, his hand comfortably laid over hers. "That was last Tuesday," I said. "The evening you told me you were too wiped out from work to even be touched." She stared at the image, her mouth opening like she might speak, then closing again, silent. "I can explain—" "Don't," I interrupted, calmly setting down the next photo. This one caught them mid-kiss in his car. "Wednesday, you said you were having dinner with your sister." I continued placing photo after photo before her, each one contradicting a different excuse she'd given me. Her breathing grew shallow, her panic rising with every image. Where did these come from?" she finally asked, barely able to form the words. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago," I said. "It's funny, but women who have completely lost interest in intimacy don't usually stay in hotels with men who aren't their husbands." I slid a few more photos across the table, her and the man entering a hotel room. She looked like she might faint. "But this," I continued, pulling out my phone, "this is what really said it all." I pressed play. Her voice, clear as day, poured from the speaker, laughing, mocking, bragging about how naive I was. She joked about how effortlessly she'd kept me in the dark. She looked like she might be sick. "You recorded me?" she said, horrified. "No," I replied. "You did. You just didn't notice who was listening. My investigator happened to be in the right place at the right time." I leaned back, letting silence fill the space between us. Slowly, it dawned on her. How much I knew, how many lies I'd unraveled, how many nights I'd spent being made to question my own instincts. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough to retain a divorce attorney," I said. "Long enough to secure our finances separately. Long enough to build a case that answers every question." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. Those tears weren't from regret. They were from being exposed. It's not what it looks like, she pleaded. It didn't mean anything. I was just confused. Don't, I said, my tone cold but even. Don't degrade my intelligence any further. I gestured toward the folder. I've got 4 months of evidence detailing exactly what it meant to you. Hours of audio where you openly mock the person who believed in you. She switched tactics. We can fix this. Therapy. I'll cut him off. Right now. I almost laughed. You think this is about him? I said. This is about the way you turned our marriage into something pathetic. How you made me feel like a fool for wanting connection. I stood and began collecting the photos. You told me intimacy disgusted you. That I was asking too much. Meanwhile, you were living a separate life behind my back. You used my love as a shield to hide behind. She grabbed my arm, desperate. Please, I was lost. I can fix this. I pulled away. No, I said. You weren't lost. You were deliberate. Every lie, every cold shoulder, every cruel joke, it was all a choice. She broke down completely, sobbing, but I felt detached. The person in front of me was a stranger. The woman I'd married could never have orchestrated a betrayal this sustained and this calculated. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Now? I said. Now you find out what life without a husband feels like. You wanted the benefits of both lives. His attention, my stability. That deal's over. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned. My lawyer says everything's ready. Our finances are untangled. Your lover can start picking up the check, since he's been enjoying the extras. She stood abruptly. You can't just walk out. But I already had. She liked to tell herself this place was hers too. At least that's the illusion she clung to. But in reality, it never was. The deed bears only my name, a fact established well before we ever exchanged rings. My attorney made the boundaries clear long ago. What's mine remains mine, and what we shared was never what she imagined. The look on her face when I reminded her of that truth, it was something to behold. She thought she was in control, not realizing she hadn't even learned the rules of the game she was playing. I trusted you, I told her. I believed every carefully constructed excuse, every denial that justified why you had no time or affection left for your own husband. I gave you space. I stayed loyal. I waited. And all the while, you treated me like a punchline. I opened my life to you, but you made one critical miscalculation. You underestimated the man you betrayed. Plenty of people can be deceived easily. I'm not among them. I didn't storm out that night. I just sat there, letting her scramble to salvage a wreck already sunken. It was like watching a stage magician realize their trick has failed mid-performance. Please, just listen, she begged, brushing tears from her cheeks. I know I've done wrong, she said, but we can get through this. I'll call him right now. I'll end it. Block him. Delete his number. Whatever it takes. I looked at her the way someone might look at a rusted-out car being sold as brand new. So that's your solution? Remove him, and the damage disappears? She nodded desperately. It didn't mean anything. It was stupid. Stupid. 4 months of secret rendezvous at cheap hotels was meaningless? Laughing behind my back? Weaving daily lies for nearly a year? That was just foolishness? Her face crumbled under the weight of it. I didn't mean to hurt you, she murmured. I just wanted to seem important to him. So let me get this right. You lied to him about how you felt because you were too busy lying to me about the truth? Do you even realize what you're saying? She started pacing, her nerves fraying. Just tell me what you want, she pleaded. What can I do to fix it? But there's nothing to repair. This isn't a mess. It's the bill coming due. I reached for my phone and held it up. This? New account. That's where my money lives now. The joint one? There's enough left in it for you to get by for a month. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that. I need access to our funds. Our funds? I replied. You mean the account I've been filling while you've been investing your time elsewhere? Why should I keep funding a life I'm no longer part of? She sank into the couch, dazed. This is insane. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Married people make mistakes. Mistakes? I nearly laughed. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, double booking dinner plans. What you did was build an entire side life with someone else, while keeping me around as a safety net. I walked to the window, staring out. You know what hurts most? If you had just told me you weren't happy, we could have talked. Maybe even worked through it. Or at least ended things with some shred of respect. Instead, you made me believe I was the problem. I never said that, she argued. You didn't have to. Every time you pushed me away, said you weren't in the mood, you were silently telling me that needing love, needing closeness, that was wrong. Every time you recoiled from my hand, you made me feel like I was asking for too much. She said nothing. Maybe, for once, she actually listened. How long have you been getting ready for this? She asked, barely audible. Getting ready for what? I turned to face her. Uncovering the truth? Protecting my assets? Filing for divorce? I let the silence stretch. I started preparing the moment I realized you were lying. That's the difference between us. I don't ignore problems. I handle them. You, on the other hand, went looking for someone new to fill the void, while I unknowingly played the role of your emotional and financial fallback. Her phone lit up. She instinctively checked the screen, then flipped it over quickly, but I'd already seen the name. Let me guess. He's wondering why you're not picking up tonight. She didn't say a word, and that silence echoed louder than any outburst. Here's how this is going to go, I said as I leaned back in my chair. The divorce papers are being filed first thing Monday morning. My attorney's confident it'll be a clean break given what we've gathered. You're welcome to take anything that's personally yours. Everything else stays with me. She blinked in disbelief, stunned into stillness. But where am I supposed to go? I assume your boyfriend has a couch or a bed you can use, I replied. Might be time to see if he's as invested in your comfort as I was. Her face turned pale, drained of all color. You don't get it, she said, voice shaking. He doesn't mean anything. We never even talked about what comes next. So let me get this right, I said, keeping my voice calm. You've been seeing this guy for months, meeting up with him several times a week, while completely ignoring your marriage. And somehow, you never once brought up a future? She couldn't look at me. Her eyes dropped to her lap. It was just supposed to be fun, she murmured. I never planned for it to become serious. Well, congratulations, I said, my tone ice cold. Because it's serious now. You can't keep a husband to pay the bills and a fling for excitement. You've got to choose. I stood and walked toward the stairs. I'm packing a bag and getting a hotel tonight. Use this time to decide where you stand, because come Monday, everything changes. Please don't do this, she cried, her voice cracking. I love you. I know I messed up, really messed up, but I still love you. I stopped halfway up the stairs and turned to look at her. No, what you love is the life I gave you. You love the security, the predictability, the safety net. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have spent 4 months treating me like a backup plan while giving someone else the fire you pretended you didn't have. I continued up the stairs. She followed, trailing behind me. What if I can prove I've changed? She begged. What if I show you that I choose you? I didn't even look her way as I started pulling clothes from the closet and tossing them into a suitcase. You already made your decision, I said flatly. Each lie, every secret meeting, every fake smile like everything was fine, that was you making a choice. I zipped the suitcase and headed for the front door. The only difference now is that you'll live with what you chose, and I'll finally walk away from it. Monday came. I was in my lawyer's office by 9 a.m. sharp. By 10, the documents were officially filed. By noon, she was served at her workplace. The private investigator suggested it be done at her job. Once I saw the logic in that, I didn't hesitate. She'd chosen to live recklessly in the open. Let her deal with the consequences in the open, too. She called me 17 times that day. I let everyone ring through. Over the next few weeks, the mask she wore began to crack. When it finally sunk in that I wasn't bluffing, that I meant every word, I watched her remorse vanish. What replaced it was bitterness and entitlement. She got herself a lawyer and claimed she deserved half of everything, despite never having paid a cent toward the mortgage or household expenses. Her attorney soon had to face the truth. She cheated. The evidence was overwhelming, and she was entirely financially dependent the whole time. Then came her boldest move yet. She filed for temporary spousal support. The judge reviewed the files, including audio of her mocking me for being too predictable, and shut her down completely. Turns out, courts don't sympathize with infidelity dressed up as boredom. As for the man she threw everything away for, he was gone within 2 weeks. Once she became emotionally and financially reliant on him, the thrill disappeared. He didn't want commitment, just the adrenaline of sneaking around with someone else's wife. She tried reaching out through mutual friends, insisting she'd realized her mistake and wanted another chance. I made sure they all knew the full story, not to get revenge, but to prevent anyone else from getting caught in her web of lies. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. She walked away with her clothes, her personal belongings, and a car she was still making payments on. I kept the house, my savings, and, more than anything, my self-respect. 3 months after the papers were signed, I ran into her at a grocery store. She looked tired, drained, like life had finally caught up with her. She tried to come over. I didn't stop. She called out my name, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing left worth saying. Later, I heard she'd moved back in with her parents and was barely scraping by. The same woman who spent months living a double life had finally learned that choices have consequences. Fantasies don't last. They collapse when reality sets in. Meanwhile, my life moved forward. Peace returned to my home. The anxiety, the constant doubt, the gut-deep unease, it all vanished. I hadn't realized how heavy it was until I finally laid it down. I never truly understood how exhausting constant self-doubt was until it finally disappeared. For the first time in ages, I wasn't blaming myself for being dismissed under the convenient label of a health issue. 6 months after the end of my marriage, I met someone new. She was honest, emotionally open, and viewed love as a mutual commitment, not a competition for control. The difference was like night and day. When she said she needed rest, it wasn't an excuse. It was the truth. When she said she had plans with friends, I knew that's exactly where she was. When she said she loved me, her actions confirmed it. That's when it hit me, just how deeply my former wife had scarred me. The damage wasn't just in the betrayal, but in the relentless deception and psychological games. Living with someone who lies to you every day rewires your mind. It erodes your self-trust, distorts your perception, and slowly convinces you to accept what should never be acceptable. Still, from all that wreckage came one undeniable lesson. Trust isn't automatic, it's earned. And when someone destroys it with deliberate cruelty, they lose the right to ever rebuild it with you. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled things, if I was too firm, too unforgiving. My answer never changes. For 8 long months, I gave her space and grace. I listened. I cared. I stayed vulnerable. And during that time, she continued to lie without blinking, belittle me in private and public, and offer no real remorse. She had every chance to be honest, to put in the work, or, at the very least, to leave with decency. Instead, she chose deception. She chose manipulation. She chose to inflict pain. While I remained loyal, she emotionally invested in someone else. Someone she told me I could never measure up to. Our marriage became a cruel joke, and I was the only one who hadn't read the script. So when she claimed her disinterest was due to medical issues, I stopped showing up the way she said she didn't need. I became the emotionally distant partner she insisted she wanted. She desired the freedom of being single while enjoying the shelter of a committed relationship. But that's not how life works. Some might say my response was cold, maybe even calculated. I call it restoring equilibrium. She believed she was in control, never realizing I had stopped playing along. In the end, she got what she'd been inching toward all along, the freedom to pursue anything and anyone, with no husband to answer to. What she hadn't expected was that the financial support would vanish along with the marriage she so easily cast aside. She told me she felt nothing for me, and I believed her. No more husband, no more pretense, no more illusion. Funny enough, that was the closure we both needed. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.